let me just juggle all of my things and welcome my guests to the stage. Thank you all for making the time and for stepping off the shiny objects floor to come and listen to a topic on scams. I'm going to sit down now. I'm joined by a group of experts here, and I just wanted to give a quick preamble on why we're talking about scams. One of the things we've seen with the scaling of financial efficiency, a lot of the companies here that you've been interacting with today are working on how do we make money better, how do we make it move more quickly, how do we leverage the interconnected economy that we have today. And what's great about that is everything gets a lot easier. It's easier to access people across the planet. But at the same time, criminal organisations are mobilising to use exactly the same infrastructure, the internet, social media platforms, telecommunications companies, and all of the financial innovations that you're hearing about this week to target victims at scale and to disrupt the lives of ordinary people. So today what we want to do is build an anatomy of a scam. What does a scammer look like? What does a scam look like? And what can we do in the community to interrupt organised scam operations and protect our friends and family and ourselves from being scammed? So without further ado, I'd like to welcome my panel. I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves so that you get used to their voices and to give you a break from my accent. Dr. Kang, can I ask you to go first, please?
Sure. Well, thanks for the invitation first. So my name is Sungyong, and I'm working at the INTERPOL Financial Crime and Anti-Corruption Center. What we do is basically coordinating the cases on financial crime and corruption matters between the member countries as an Interpol, because Interpol is a communication channel between the member countries as well as the data center. And I joined Interpol for about 2 years ago, and before joining the Interpol, I have been working as a police officer at the Korean National Police Agency. Thank you.
Just for your information, Dr. Kang is probably the coolest police officer I've ever met, so...
Thank you.
Dina.
Okay, thanks, Rene. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here with us. My name is Dina Mainville, and I am the founder and president of Web3 professional services firm Collisionless. I've spent about a decade in the blockchain space and the last 6 years or so working on forensic investigations for fraud victims.
Awesome. I'm Caroline Bowler. I'm the CEO of BTC Markets, which is an Australian cryptocurrency exchange. Before that, I spent about a decade in traditional finance working for a well-known US investment bank whose name I shall not mention.
Hi everyone, my name is Amanda Wick. I'm a principal with Incite Consulting. I'm also the founder and CEO of the Association for Women in Cryptocurrency. I spent nearly a decade as a money laundering prosecutor for the US Department of Justice, was at the FIU FinCEN, was the chief of legal affairs at Chainalysis, a blockchain analytics company, led the financial investigation for the January 6th committee, and now spend my life meeting amazing women around the world and male allies who help us make digital finance more inclusive to women.
And I'm just the token banker. So perhaps where we should start, and can you guys see any of these slides yet? Yeah, perfect. Wrong one. There we go. Perhaps we should start building a bit of a picture of what does a scammer look like. I think it's very easy for us to distance ourselves from what scammers are and imagine them sort of disconnected from all of our other mental models. But I think what's really interesting is there's so much of an intersection with cybercrime, with human trafficking, with money laundering and other criminal typologies. So perhaps we could start to build a bit of a picture of who are our scammers and why do we need to organise to disrupt their activities. Dr. Kang, can I throw to you first, please?
Sure thing, but before I explain, I want to just make a disclaimer that although I'm representing the Interpol here, the opinions and views that I represent here is my personal view, not representing the Interpol's views, just to make it clear. So for about the scams currently, so everything is now becoming more industrialized and criminals are relying on each other's different types of crime. So modus operandi of the scam is being divided into different sections, which are supported by the different types of the groups of the criminals. So scammers, they themselves not carrying out all the modus operandi to defraud the victims. So sometimes they buy the script used by the other scammers. Sometimes they buy the data on or PIA personal information or the financial information of the to target the victim from those other criminals who already have those data, and sometimes they rely on those technological criminals with the technological capacity to make the fake website and to have such a ability to make the fake investment platform, etc. So they are helping each other, and that is causing a problem because it is lowering the cost of the new criminals entering into these scams, which means there is a lot easier for criminals to operate a new scams, and it causes quite a big problem for the law enforcement agencies because there are more and more crimes are being happening as well. But not only for the scam itself, money laundering itself is being relied on different types of criminals. So sometimes criminals, scammers, they rely on the herders who are hiring money mules, sometimes willing money mules, sometimes unwilling money mules, and they use those money mules' bank accounts to launder the money. Sometimes they rely on the third-party scam, money laundering enablers like this. Sometimes it could be different types of professions, lawyers, accounts, or tax advisors, etc. And with the support of them, they sometimes make some of the cases that I saw was we were able to see those money laundering professional network having like more than hundreds of the accounts of the share companies or personal accounts and using those accounts to launder the money. So nowadays it's becoming industrialized. Criminals are providing their service as a crime. So crime as a service. So, and then division of labor is increasingly making these scams being more widespread and industrialized. As you see in this picture, it is the factory. It seems like it is like the factory which is industrialization. So criminals are also relying on the division of the labor to further develop their efficiency of the work. And we see increasing use of the technologies as well. Virtual assets are increasingly used by the criminals. Because we receive every single day the requests from the member countries explaining about the case being happened and seeking assistance from other countries where the money is being directed to. Before it was only the fiat asset, but now increasing more requests is on the virtual assets, mentioning about the address, virtual asset address, going from one address to another, and they are seeking assistance from us, from our side. And they are many times, good thing is that more than half of these, like those kind of assets are going to the centralized exchanges, but still many are using these unhosted wallets, P2Ps, which is a lot more difficult for the law enforcement agencies to go after. And everything else, I mean, whatever I say is globalization. I mean, I want to say at last, globalization. So A is the criminal country, criminal jurisdiction, and the B is the victim jurisdiction. But money laundering jurisdiction is another country, and those other criminals who are providing crime as a service, who are selling those data or who are selling those scripts are located in another jurisdiction. So as an Interpol, we have to make the member countries related with this a single case to communicate better. It is not just 1-2 country, it is just 3, 4, 5 countries. So globalization makes our job a lot more difficult, which means that, I mean, our job is becoming increasingly more crucial. So we want to add our value to fight against the scams.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kang. Amanda, it looks like you wanted to jump in very quickly before I summarize.
Only because I think one of the things that changed from the days that I was a prosecutor that a lot of people don't realize is that inside of that criminal jurisdiction, inside those compounds, are victims. I think a lot of people don't realize that thousands of human trafficking victims are being taken from countries in Southeast Asia and are forced to become the scammers. I think we have this perception that all scammers are criminals and that they sign up on the criminal check, like the sign-up list for criminals, and they volunteer, and these people are being trafficked and forced and oftentimes beaten and tortured to scam thousands of people around the world every day. And that's a mental shift to think that some of our criminals are victims too. And I think people just need to keep that in mind, especially when we talk about what's happening in Thailand and Myanmar. The criminals are in that jurisdiction and they are victimizing often their own people and putting them in these scam shops. So it's not just, it's yes, but it's also this horrifying gray.
I mean, I think that's so important for us to really understand this, right? So we used to only have to think about payments as a service, banking as a service, blockchain as a service. Now we've got not only crime as a service, cyber information as a service, human trafficking as a service. We've got a whole e-commerce ecosystem for criminal activity. And so as we scale the infrastructure, we need to think about how do we scale tools, community efforts and policy, as well as supporting law enforcement to interrupt these activities. So, but look, when we think about, we'll get to the victims in a minute, and I think one of the things that's really important for us to all think about is every single person in this room either has been or knows a victim of a scam. So how do these poor people who are being, human trafficked into these workshops, and how do these criminals leverage all of this stuff that they're buying to specifically target victims? Dina, can I ask you to lead us off on that discussion?
Yeah, certainly. So there are so many different types of financial crimes and scams. We could probably go into, we could spend a week sort of dissecting the different approaches that are used. But if you look, something like this that's on the screen here, KK Park, as Sungyong said, this is organized crime. So what's generally happening in a case like this is people think about it like a business with operational efficiencies. So people don't just get kidnapped and sit at a desk and they're not given access to Facebook and told go scam someone. They're actually trained on how to say things. They're given a playbook on what kind of person to target, how to deliver that scam. We've also seen cases as well. A law enforcement agency recently told me that they were seeing more and more cases in Canada, where I'm from, where someone would be onboarding, like let's say I'm instructing Caroline here to get an account at an exchange, and because I'm not sure that she's going to be able to work through the KYC process, so the onboarding process, I'm actually going to dial into her computer and be her, because I know exactly what to say. So any weaknesses in the system, the scammers are really trying to figure out how to standardize their approaches, how to become more efficient, and how to deliver something that's working again and again and again. So it's highly organized, and one of the things that we talk about, our biggest weaknesses, is that in our fight against scams, we're actually approaching this from a very disorganized way. So we really need to rethink how all of this stuff is being executed.
Amanda, did you want to add anything to that? Or?
No, that was fantastic. Other than to say that I think that if you look at this fantastic picture, if you look on the left, the text messaging, there's an assumption of who the victim is in these cases. And I frequently hear, oh, well, if we could just educate people and if we could just make them smarter. I was scammed when I was younger and living in Stockholm and fell for an apartment scam. And that was back when I just believed in the goodness of people, and then I became a prosecutor and that ended. So it makes it harder to scam people when you think everyone is just inherently evil and doing a good job at not being evil, but I digress. The point of this left side picture though, anybody that the criminals are using AI to attack intelligent people and spear phishing. They're using everything, Facebook, everything that you can get online. They have all of that, and they are using that. Your dog dying, the idea that only intelligent people, only stupid people are being scammed is absolutely wrong. You, your parents, your friends, 18 to 25-year-old males, your perception of the demographic of who's a victim, we have to change that. Because every time you share a photo online, every time you put your data out there, somebody is grabbing it to at some point contact you and probably try to steal your data. So every time you get a text from somebody that you don't know, just shut it down. That's my slight warning. But I think we don't think about when we work at companies, if you work at a company that collects data, you have a responsibility to deal with it responsibly. In the United States, we have little to no data privacy, and it's everywhere, and it's being bought legally, forget illegally. And so I think when we're looking at this and we're walking around a FinTech festival, I love it, but at the same time, I just see thousands of vectors of data that can be stolen by criminals. Because if you're not being careful with who you sell your data to, how you collect your data, what you do with your data, all of that is people's information that criminals at some point will get to use to attack your customers, your family, and your friends. That's the one thing I'm down.
I just want to mention something here because I'm having an aha moment, which I can't believe this is actually happening. But I was actually scammed as well a couple of months ago with an Airbnb scam. And I think part of it's never dawned on me because I think we're actually very desensitized to it. And I've never really thought that, yeah, this is I mean, for me, I see the purview is crypto always, but it's actually much, much broader than that. So just
In
wanted to share
fairness,
that moment.
My scam was Western Union. It was not crypto. I just want that on the record, but keep going.
So I think that what's interesting, right? So at least 2 out of 5 people on stage have been scammed, right? So I think that's helping to humanize that. Damn it! Now that was so insightful. I feel sorry for anyone who is stealing my image online and then having to look at it, I must say. But Caroline, I know that you do a heap of work with victims, right? And one of the great things about spending time with Caroline is that I get an insight into what it's really like to have deep care for the customers that you support, and to work really hard with victims in what is sometimes a very, very frustrating context, because often we don't want to believe that we've been scammed, even if it was by Airbnb. So, Caroline, can I ask you to talk a little bit about that work that you do with victims? Like, what's that experience been? What about people who get re-scammed, things like that?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you so much. That's really kind, and there's only so much credit I can take for that, but I'll go back to the team and let them know that nice things were being said about them when their backs were turned. We take it incredibly seriously at BTC Markets, and we've got a whole team, and I have had a whole team dedicated around this. It's pretty much since the business began. I don't tend to spend a huge amount of face-to-face time on these calls, but on the occasions where I have done, it is incredibly traumatic to hear the pain and trauma from these individuals. One case in particular springs to mind of a lady who, more than many of us here, had a career in financial services, thought herself to be very savvy, had retired with a sizable amount of wealth, but her husband passed away. She was incredibly vulnerable. The scammers, like that, found it out, went after her, targeted her, and she lost her money. But the worst part about it is, as you've said, what these scammers have realized is that if they can scam you once, they can scam you twice. It's not that individuals become even more shielded. If anything, individuals become more vulnerable, where the first time they've been scammed and they came back to this lady, they retargeted her and told her that they'd be able to get her money back, and she lost it for a second time. So by the time I got to speak to this poor individual, she was distraught, but also had a strength, because her point was, I have to share my story so that other people can learn that it can happen to any of us. And certainly for us at BTC Markets, when we've been looking at the scams as they've come through, we do extended verification calls on certain demographics. But one of the most recent demographics that we were doing it on were young men aged 18 to 25. Now, if you know any young men of that age group, or if you were once a young man of that age group, you know yourself how you feel about your view on the world and how savvy you feel that you are. And yet we had specific targets on that age group because of the vulnerabilities they had around gaining employment. We ended up having to do extended verification calls on that age group until the actors then realised, okay, they're not going to get through on BTC Markets, and they went elsewhere. But the trauma that is experienced by these victims as they go through it, and that sense of, but I thought I was immune. I thought that only happens to silly people or stupid people. Or I don't think people appreciate, and I think this is what's so fantastic with Dr. Kang sharing this information, the sheer degree of sophistication in the targeting. You're not stupid. You've properly been victimized and will be re-victimized. And I think it's taking that stigma away from that shame, as we do with other points of crime. It's like as if your house has been broken into. You wouldn't be walking around being, I'm so embarrassed that my alarm system didn't work. You would just be rightfully warning your neighbors and saying to your neighbors, guys, you check your alarm systems because they're in the neighborhood. I know that they do that here in Singapore. And I think that that's possibly how we need to reposition our views around scams and just reduce that sense of shame.
I mean, I think that's so powerful. You know, it's not that any of us are stupid that are being targeted. It's like anyone who's got emotions is being targeted, and that's probably a more helpful way to think about it. Advertising uses exactly the same psychological construct to help access the parts of our brain that make emotional decisions, which drive the consumer behaviour to orientate us towards purchasing products. And this exact same pattern is being used by scammers to appeal to the emotional part of our decision making in order to separate us from our money.
Sorry, Rene, if I can just add one other point on that. Even when our team, who are trained in all of these subjects, and talk to people who are coming on board, and we say to them, listen, you are trying to send your crypto to a known scam account. You are going to lose this money if you send this money. Do not send this money. We are explicit with our warnings. And people say, they told me you'd say that. if you don't send my money, I'm going to sue you. They warned me that you would try and stop me from making money off of this amazing deal that they've been told that they're going to have. We're obligated because we've warned them, we've told them everything. They send the money or they send the crypto. It's gone, it's lost, and within 24 hours, we get a phone call from them saying, why did you send the money? And it's like, if we don't send the money, you'll sue us. If we do send the money, quite right, if you don't listen to the alarm bells that we're ringing. But the point I'm making there is that is the degree of sophistication in the manipulation that goes on with these scams, that they can convince you that black is white. Don't listen to the experts. Don't trust anybody else. Just trust us, whether it's a romance scam, or investment scam, or so forth. So it's incredibly sophisticated. And as I say, sorry, go ahead.
No, I think I saw some heads in the crowd that were just kind of like aghast and couldn't believe it, and think like, how could anyone possibly believe that? But if you don't understand how much misinformation and disinformation is out in the world, or the rates right now of the decline in institutional trust in all governments, if you're not paying attention to what is happening in governments globally, where every single incumbent election is being overturned by people who are dissatisfied and by a machine that is convincing them that the person who is doing this is their government, their bank, and whatever institution in their life, months before that person goes to that exchange, they have been conditioned and groomed to believe that the problem with our system is that only wealthy people are able to make this money, that it's actually the exchanges who are conspiring against them, that this is all a conspiracy to prevent people from getting the wealth that the 1% have. If I keep saying this to you over and over for weeks, and you think you're too smart to believe it, trust me, you will be a scam victim someday. It is the hubris of all of us to think that we are better, to think that we are smarter, to think that something in our lives can't be exploited. If you don't understand how many people in the world don't have money and can be convinced that that is X person's fault and it's the exchange, we are doing a disservice to all of humanity. And I think that's the thing that breaks my heart, is that people will sit through these presentations and listen to us and walk away and say, it wouldn't be me. And I'm telling you, maybe it won't. Maybe you were a prosecutor. Maybe you believe that all humans are horrible. Great. That's a dark world. We're in it together. But if that's not you, it is your parents, it is your family, it is your friends, it is your in-laws, it is your neighbors. And you should hopefully care.
Sorry, just if I may as well on that, sorry to interrupt, but just as lived experience, I was very fortunate. We've just managed to buy a house in Melbourne, which anyone who's been in Australia will know that they're
like $8 million.
Pretty much. I've sold a kidney, it's fine. But we were doing the initial bank transfer on the weekend, and the person, like the well-known estate agent that I was buying it from, hand wrote down the bank account number and BSB, the bank account details. And I will not lie, I was looking at that for a long time going, do I trust? And it was a Saturday, the payment wouldn't clear until the Monday, and the inner banker in me was going, oh God, what have I done? Because that is all the money that we have, and I've just trusted it over to somebody who I've only just met in this professional setting. Is this even real? It is, it's fine. But to the point about paranoia, if you're not paranoid, like you're not paranoid enough, basically, I think is probably, isn't it, how the expression goes? Sorry.
So I just wanted to go back to the victim-centric approach, and then I just also emphasize that it is not only the financial loss, also like the psychological damage, but also some people, even suicide. It even lead to the physical damage to the people, which is the essence of our life. So it is very serious crime, and I think but now I think our society is now receiving those kind of scams and fraud as a serious crime, which is good, and that's the reason why we have this separate session on scam in this SFF, which is good. And also in regard to the going back to the victims reporting, and the shames, as we're saying that everyone is possible to be deceived, because the criminals are using the data to tailor their modus operandi so that we can easily be deceived. So we should not put blame on the victim side, so that victim don't get ashamed and then they go to the police and they to report it. And also one of the very first steps that we can come up with to erase those shame is promoting that it could be you as well, but also we can change some of the names that we use for certain types of crimes. For instance, for the romance scam, which is mixed with the investment scam, which Amanda just explained, is we call it as a pig butchering, but it's a little bit putting shame on the victim side. So Interpol, we came up with a new word which is romance baiting, so that we don't want to be give some kind of put shame on the victim side. And as we can take step by step by using different words and by promoting this kind of awareness, so that everyone knows that everyone could be possible to be a victim of a fraud, so that we don't shame the victims.
Yep. I think it's really helpful not to call our victims pigs, right? Considering we could all be one. But if you do hear pig butchering, I mean, the term really relates to love baiting, so appealing to that, also romance baiting, really appealing to that romance which we all aspire to have in our lives, and using that to perpetrate crime. I guess the next step is really, and I'm just going to advance that. So we've been workshopping all week on, you know, what is this anatomy of a scam? How can we give people tools and mental models to think about being more aware personally, but also in our professional lives? For those of us who are working on regulation, who are working on enforcement, who are working on building financial products, how do we make this all harder? We spend so much time making money easier. How do we make it harder for the criminals? Part of that, obviously, is also recovering funds. So I just want to throw to Dr. Kang, because I know Interpol's been doing a little bit of work on how the enforcement agencies can help with recovery. But what are some things that the community can do, that financial institutions can do, that social media platforms and telecommunications companies can do to help law enforcement?
Sure. So everything's now cross-border. So a victim in a country send money to the big country. In that case, Interpol will be involved, and we will help member countries to communicate better in a fast manner, so that money could be recovered. So time is the essence to recover the money, because with the emergence of virtual asset, even faster, but even with the fiat assets, the cross-border transaction is getting more faster and faster, which means that the money will be disappear after a few days. So if our response as a law enforcement is delayed, the money will be gone somewhere else. So Interpol as a cross-border, as a liaison between the different LEAs of different jurisdictions, we came up with the IGR, which is Interpol Global Rapid Intervention of the Payment. It is a new initiative we came up in 2022 November. Even before the IGR, there was such a request made by the victim country to the jurisdiction where the money is being directed to. But before the IGR, normally those kind of requests has been responded in a delayed manner, or sometimes it has been ignored. Because requested country, many times they receive a lot of different types of requests from different countries. It's not only about the stop payment, but also about arresting the fugitive, sharing some data, etc. So many times they were not able to put priority on the stop payment requests, which requires the rapid and swift response from the requested country party. So what we came up with, we asked member countries to put the IGRIP in the title of in the message, so that when the request is coming in the requested country, when they go to the office, especially the NCB, which is our POC of each country. So NCB is the National Center of Bureau, and they are the one who have access to our Interpol communication channel. And when they go to the office, when they receive the email box, we ask them to look at the email which says IGRI first, and read what is it, and react on it. And at the same time, we ask requesting country to advise the victim to go to the sending financial institution and ask for the swift recall. In the meantime, because like sometimes swift recall request communication is also sometimes being delayed, using our communication channel between the police, we ask receiving police where the beneficiary financial institution is located. When they receive the IGRI request, they approach their financial institutions and say that there was an IGRI request from a victim country, and the victim there reported that they sent money to the bank account that your clients, and they inform the information. And what we expect is financial institutions, as they are, of course, the receiver, the beneficiary account is their client's account. So they know that what is the source of income of the account holder, what is the pattern of transaction, with the data that they have, together with the information they were relayed from the IGRIP, which is the victim's report, as well as the IBAN account, which is the account holder's account. So they were gonna make a decision, make their own analysis, and make a voluntary business judgment whether to suspend or not. Frankly speaking, what we need support from the community, especially from the financial institution, is first of all, sometimes, well, when they receive such IGRIP information from their police in their jurisdiction, some financial institution, they voluntarily suspend the account. The other financial institution, they don't. And many times what we see is in those jurisdictions where the AMS CFT enforcement is strong enough, most of the cases they voluntarily suspend. But the other jurisdiction, they may not, which is understandable because I know that there will be also concern of the civil lawsuit which will be raised by the account holder. I mean, and then we see some cases account holder go to the financial institutions and threatening that, oh, why are you freezing my money? I'll bring a lawsuit to you, because they have a lot of money which gained from the criminal activity. They hire lawyers and they go after. So I understand their situation, but also I think, I mean, we need to put, even though financial institution which is located in jurisdiction where AMS CFT is not strong enough, hopefully they can put more priority and change their culture to put more priority on from the victim side, and considering that this is the fraudulent money, so that they can take more voluntary actions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Kang. So if, specifically for the audience now, if you are in a position in a financial institution where you're dealing with payments, you're dealing with accounts, or you're dealing with frauds and scams, please go to INTERPOL and look up IGRIP and see how you can support that in the best possible way. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, just to add. So to make it clear, so it should be the what we also want to ask financial institution borrowing this opportunity, because this is not really the often opportunity for us to attend this private organized forum, or although it is the MSA's as a background. So what I want to emphasize and ask a financial institution, let your employees also know about the IGRIP. And when the victim comes to the financial institutions, because many times victim goes to the financial institution first, even before they go to the police. And when they come to the bank, your employees can explain the victim that, oh, there is such a thing called IGRIP, so go to your police station and ask your police officer to make the IGRIP request through their NCB, which is the POC of INTERPOL. And then IGRIP could be more utilized, even though the police officer, local police officer who are receiving the victim don't know about the IGRIP.
I got you.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I can't emphasize the importance enough, because I used to run a financial crime task force, and I would hear from financial institutions, well, we just send them to our local police. And the problem is that crypto exploits what law enforcement, the two things that law enforcement is the worst at: technology and financial investigations. And so the assumption that you will go to a police department and they will say, we don't do crypto, we don't know what that is. So if you're a financial institution assuming that law enforcement will save your customer, please don't assume that. We are working at building capacity around the world, but INTERPOL deals with some of the best police departments, best agencies in the world, and even they struggle with resources to deal with this problem. So you can help us just as much by sending people to INTERPOL, because the local police or your federal agencies may not know about INTERPOL. So before you push that onto overburdened and under-resourced law enforcement, please think about it being something that you can do, even if it's not your responsibility. There are people who do things that they're not required to do all the time because it's the right thing. Be one of the better institutions, and not just the what do I have to do, be the what could you do to help your customers.
And just before you dive in, Dina, we do have the opportunity to take questions from the audience. So if anyone's got questions, please make sure they're submitted. I'll ask the team to throw the QR code up. And Dina, over to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to provide an additional layer of context here. So the data actually shows us that victims are unlikely to report when they're asked to report several times. So maybe they'll go to law enforcement, but if law enforcement's answer is, we don't know what this is, maybe call the anti-fraud center, then their propensity to report to the anti-fraud center is maybe they get there. If they get to the anti-fraud center and the anti-fraud center says, oh, also, can you call your bank? Usually the victim isn't reporting. So what we actually need to do if we want to solve a global problem is figure out how to create a one-stop shop for reporting. That way, if the victim goes to the exchange, or they go to law enforcement, or they go to professional services firm, we're all tapping into the same database where we can say, okay, we have an incident. Now how do we organize a global response to that?
Awesome. So this has really brought us to this is what scams look like. This is how victims are targeted. This is what the experience is as a victim, and these are the challenges. I think what's interesting about that drop-off rate is it's very similar to something we deal with in e-commerce all the time, which is cart abandonment. So, you know, we always wanted to drive GMV. We want to make sure everyone's getting through the checkout as quickly as possible. I think we need to start thinking about how we apply the same methodologies to capturing scam complaints and filing. We've got a couple of questions, but what we're really going to focus on in this last part is what can we as a community do? One of the things that I really like that we often see in crypto on certain elements, but we certainly see it in other parts of the community as well, is the idea of neighbourhood watch. We've got people who will volunteer in their spare time to chase down and investigate scams, who will support victims, who will do things that we need to do. And if we are to come up with a response at scale to support a law enforcement infrastructure that's not orientated to the scale of the criminal activity, there's an obligation on us as a community, there's an obligation on us as commercial institutions, particularly financial services, but also particularly social media and telecommunications, in order to mobilise. So we're going to, I'm going to throw just the 4 areas that I think we can help on is community. How can we work better as a community? How can we leverage technology? How can we support enforcement? And how can we change policy? And as we wind through towards the end of the session, and I throw to each of you, if you can pick one of those and talk about what would be your call to action for the members of our audience here. We've got a couple of questions, and so what are your thoughts on AI and chatbots being used in texting SMS scams? Caroline, do you see any of that?
Absolutely. Deepfakes are now well and truly live in the scam ecosystem. What we found with our tech partner is that they haven't been able to keep up. And the irony is that I now have to employ humans to go back and check for what the technology is or is not able to do. But the threats are more sophisticated. There's a far more return on investment for the criminals to invest in this technology, and got to help the providers that are coming behind to try and do their best, which is appreciated, but we're still needing humans to come in and intervene. AI can be used as a power for good. This isn't anti-AI, but it simply is that on the other side of the coin, we haven't got the tech developed yet to work. We're certainly at the ones that we've seen.
Can I just add to that? Because I was at a booth here where I did a quiz for some swag or something, and it asked me to identify faces. Has anyone tried which faces are deep fakes, real or fake? I think I got 4 out of 8, and they were like, great job. I was like, really, 50% recognition rate? That's kind of terrifying, right? Because if I was a scammer, that means 50% of people just got scammed. And so, to your point, I know there are discussions, and there's smarter people in the room that are doing this, but the question of, do we need to develop good AI that then saves people from the bad AI, in the sense that if humans can't do this, if human compliance can't do this, do we need to develop AI that recognizes SMS, that recognizes chatbots, that looks at your emails, that looks at your phone calls? I understand there's a privacy risk there, but we're actually in a community that does in fact save people sometimes from terrible technology. And if you're in a culture that says maybe we should have a social safety net that protects humans from AI, that may actually be AI protecting humans from AI. And so I think my hope is that from a technological standpoint, we can talk about acknowledging humans are going to hume. We need to have technology that saves humans from themselves. Looking at the typologies, looking at feeding in known criminal scripts, and being able to save people to say, this text is a scam, this email is a scam. And granted, you're not going to be able to save everyone, but at that point, we have a difficult discussion about social Darwinism, and that's a discussion for another day. But up until that point, I think tech could be doing a lot better to save people.
Awesome. So that's the tech focus and the call to action there. We've had a question on education. How do we educate people? I'm going to quickly answer that, which is very naughty of me as a moderator. But we should be educating, absolutely, and this is part of what we're doing here. We're working to build this frauds and scams and anatomy of a scam topic. As I said, we've been having workshops all week, which have culminated in this. Throughout several other platforms run by GFTN, we'll be doing other workshops on exactly this topic. So please, and that's part of education, please make sure you reach out to any of us as well if you want to participate in that. But the other thing that I think is we have to say is education is not enough, right? Continually just educating people. Often the decision in the moment of the scam is emotional, not logical. Okay, so we're a little tight on time. So this one here is, talking about mental health. That's tapping into that emotional piece, and absolutely we need more research on this. I'm going to throw to Dr. Kang and ask, what is the one thing you would want the community to do to support law enforcement? What's the one action that each individual in their personal life could do to support law enforcement on interrupting scam operations?
Well, I think very first step is be empathetic and be empathetic. Be empathetic to the victims. I mean, whatever we do, at least, I mean, we need the legal changes. We need more legal tools which allow us easily access to the data which is located in the foreign jurisdiction. And there is such a changes in our law. Well, many countries, they don't have such a changes. We need regulations, more on the regulations for AML, CFT, stronger regulations. And if the BASF is not being regulated, I think that is the direction that we need to go. Also, regulation is not enough. Enforcement of regulations is needed, and also education needed. For everything to be established to back up our law enforcement, I think the public's agreement and public's opinion that we need to proactively, and put more effort and time on this should be made. And for that, I think we need to be more empathetic to the victim so that we can come up with a more social agreement that we need to change our law, we need to change our regulation, we need to enforce the regulation, and we need to educate the people. And all of this requires social resources. And for you to use that social resources, we need a public agreement. So I think to reach to the point, I think we need to be more empathetic to the victims. And I agree with Self, we are empathetic to the victims, so we really want to help the victims to recover the money because it is the hard-earned money, it's sometimes life-saving, and sometimes people are losing their life because they were deceived. So be empathetic to the victims.
Thank you.
Please, God, the last one. Look at the last one.
Would KYC involving messaging apps, Telegram, social media platforms like Facebook and online shopping platforms like Amazon help to stem financial scams? Amanda, you seem like you want to answer that question.
Whoever asked this question, you don't have to raise your hand, but please let me buy you all of the drinks after this session, because yes. I have a friend that works at a certain company that rhymes with Schmetta, and they are not going to do anything until they're regulated to do it. The reality is, and Dina says this all the time, and I 100% agree with her, and I'm stealing it from her, we need better laws in every jurisdiction to force social media platforms, telco, all of these things, they have to care. And right now we have a huge problem where e-commerce, all of the responsibility is financial institutions that are so far on either side and everything in the middle is dropping the ball. And yes, to whoever answered this questions, we need so much help. Even in crypto, we have something called a hash, which is helping track a transaction. And in traditional finance, we actually don't have that. Some countries do. But even just putting a single transaction number from start to finish through e-commerce would help this. But we're not going to get that until they're regulated to do it. And if you look at Match, if you look at Tinder, if you look at Bumble, if you look at all of the platforms that are trying to help, and I'm putting it in air quotes purposefully, just in case anyone is taking a picture of how offensive these companies don't do things because they're not required to, and I'm totally stealing this from Dina, we need better laws because for-profit companies will not generally do what they're not required to do if it costs money. And so yes to this person, thank you for asking this amazing question, and all of us need to advocate for better protection from platforms that aren't protecting us.
Dina, go.
Yeah, I've, yes, although the question specifically asks about KYC, and I take a different approach. I don't think we need to KYC because I have a lot of problems with how we do KYC today. However, there are some really interesting and innovative solutions that we're coming out with around identity. And when you can start to create, let's say, a blockchain-based identity, and you can use a private key to validate that you are, in fact, who you say you are, that's where we can hold technology platforms accountable for actually implementing something that will reduce the likelihood of someone being scammed.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you for some amazing insights today. Really, this session is about a call to action. 2 out of 5 of the people on stage have been scammed. The other 3 aren't sure that they have and probably have been. And so, you know, when we're sitting here saying this, it's to create that empathy that Dr. Kang talked about, which is, we all need to look after each other. We need to think of ourselves as a community of people operating in a very vast e-commerce ecosystem, as are the criminals, and we need to scale our response together as a community. I think one of the things that we need to also make sure that we're doing is bringing things inside the regulatory purview, whether that's social media platforms, whether that's taking regulated banks and asking them to do crypto activity because they have the controls, or whether it's supporting exchanges that are behaving in exactly the right way, like BTC Markets has expressed that they do. These things, instead of pushing that out into the wild and leaving that to organised crime to run, let's bring that inside the regulatory perimeter and make sure responsible institutions who are doing things because it's the right thing to do and because an ecosystem, a large-scale e-commerce ecosystem, which is populated by scammers, is bad for business and it's bad for every single one of us and the people we care about. Thank you all so much for being here today, and I hope you're enjoying SFF.